Core Keeper 1.0 finally released, so I decided to spend 100 days in hard mode. I started off by creating the world, setting it to hard mode, and then creating my character. His name would be Hubert. Once I spawned into the core, I started to break some of the wood that had spawned around it. I put some torches down and I began making my beginner base. Once I had some foundation down, I decided to start going to mine some of the copper that was around me. After some time collecting copper, I returned, I made my furnace, and I started smelting. I quickly made a copper workbench, and soon after, I made a copper pickaxe. After I had finished making that copper pickaxe, I thought I was ready to explore a little more. I decided to explore a little around my base while collecting any wood, ores, and mushroom that I passed on the way. After I did some exploring, I came across what looked like this sort of race cart track, and there were a couple of race cars sitting around. I didn't have anyone to race though, so I did some laps around myself, and then I decided to take the minecarts back to my base. On my way back home, I fought this giant mushroom who was clearly too high leveled for me. I nearly died, so I decided to just give up on the fight. I knew I'd need to put some of the seeds down that I had collected so far, so I began to start working on a garden. It wasn't anything huge, but it was a starter. After collecting copper the past couple of days, I had enough to finally make a copper set, so that's what I did. I knew I would eventually need more food, so I decided to start farming the fungal soil. The point of this was that mushrooms grew on those, which would be a great beginner food for early game. While I was exploring around, I saw my screen shaking, and I happened to come across the first boss. I tried to go a little closer in order to farm some slime, but then I accidentally got him aggroed on me. I died very quickly. I figured I wasn't ready to fight that boss yet, so I decided to go explore to get some more things to prepare. I got any wood, ores, and food I found on my way. Came across this weird looking thing, which I still have no idea what it is. I then found my first clay caves, which would be amazing for me. This is because clay caves hold tin ore, which is the next ore I need to make my new armor set and weapons. This would help me get prepared to fight the boss again. However, I quickly died after entering the caves. Came back to grab my loot and I instantly died before I was even able to get it. Came back again, making sure to be extra careful this time. However, I quickly died again. This was showing me that this was going to be no easy challenge already. I went back, and this time I was even more careful, trying to avoid anything I could. I grabbed some more tin that I would need to make my armor, and I headed back to my base. Put all this tin in my furnaces, and then I decided to begin construction on my automatic mushroom farm. After making that farm, my tin had smelted, so I decided to make the tin set and some tools. I then mined a little more tin just to prepare a bit more before I fought the boss again. With all my new tools and armor ready, I ventured down and I finally attempted to fight the boss once more. He got me down to 1 health almost instantly. I tried to run away, but while running away, I continued doing damage to him. I thought I'd have to run home to try the boss once more, but I decided to just keep my distance and keep shooting him with my slingshot. He kept running away from me, jumping back to where he had originally spawned, which actually made this fight a lot easier for me. I got pretty nervous once I saw that he was close to dying, but I eventually managed to kill him. Thank God. I grabbed some more slime while I was there, and I grabbed all the loot that the boss had dropped. It didn't really drop anything notable. After killing that first boss, I unlocked a new NPC who was able to move in. I just had to make a house for him first. This NPC who moved in sold a really good pet who I really wanted to buy. I decided to go up to him and sell some of my junk gear so I would be able to afford to buy the egg. I also activated the core for the first boss I killed, and I ended up crafting a slime sword. Once I finally had enough money, I bought the egg and I put down my incubator to get it going. I then decided to do some more exploring until I came across this copper ore chunk. I would eventually be able to set up stationary drills on it to farm copper. I gathered a bunch more tin and intended to do a little more exploring. That was until I unexpectedly died. While walking back, I happened to come across the second boss, which I knew I would eventually have to fight. I then grabbed the loot that I had dropped and I headed home. After heading back, I decided to set up a root farm because I knew I would need a lot of wood in the future, especially to make the minecart system I was planning on making. I had finally thought it was time to make some expansions to my base after neglecting that since day one. While I was finishing up my base, I accidentally dropped a bomb down in the middle of it. To finish up the expansions to our base, I added a little more room to the garden area. After I was done with all those expansions, I decided to put some drills I had made down on that copper ore I found. I was intending to make minecart rails with the copper I got. You wouldn't believe what happened next. I went back to finish setting up the drills, to grab my loot, and then I headed back. After heading back, I checked up on the egg that I had put in the incubator a while back, and it had finally hatched. His name would be Hubert Jr. I then began working on my minecart trail, and I also was hoping to find an iron cave. When I was done expanding my minecart trail, I finally ran into an iron cave that I decided to investigate. I started picking up any of the ores I found on the way, and I quickly found an iron deposit very close by my minecart rail. I started heading home to grab the drills I needed to put on that deposit, but I died on the way back. When I respawned, I had crafted those drills and I ran back to get my loot and put them down. Once I set those drills up, I started heading home, but guess what happened? I ran back to get my loot, and I figured why not try to fight the second boss while I had the chance. Even if I didn't kill it, it wouldn't be a big deal. And I didn't kill it. It ran away from me. I decided to stay there and wait for it to loop around again. And it ran away from me once again. I decided to go check up on the iron mine, but I died on the way there. I ran back to the iron mine and I found this NPC next to it, which honestly didn't really give me anything, but I collected the iron that was waiting for me. While I was on my way back from picking up that iron, I decided I would give that boss one more attempt. It did not go well. I wanted to do some expansions to my minecart system, so I decided to collect some copper manually and to get the wood I had began farming. I crafted hundreds of more tracks. I then continued expanding out the railway that was to the north of my base. Once I was done expanding the railway a bit, I went back to the base and collected some of the tin I had smelted. I then made an anvil and a workbench with the tin. After all this, I decided to go check up on my iron and copper mines. Now that I had finally had a decent amount of iron, I decided it was time to do some fishing. I needed some fish so I could make better food to help prepare for the boss fight I was about to do. I made my food, I made a couple extra tools, and then I was off to try to fight the boss once more. Before the fight started, I took a potion that increased my melee damage, and I started swinging at it as much as I could. I started to do some decent damage on it, and then it started to circle around me. I held on for as long as I could, but I eventually got killed after getting the boss very low. After I ran back, to my surprise, the boss was still on the same health as when it had killed me. This made it very easy to quickly finish up the fight. I grabbed all the loot from the boss, which again was nothing crazy, but I took it all home. I then made the things I need for the new NPC to move in. I then went to collect some more iron and kill things in the iron caves, and while I was on the way, I found 2 copper deposits. After grabbing some more loot, I purchased the scanner to find the 3rd boss in the world. I made some potions, collected all the flowers from my farm, and I harvested my root farm before I decided to head out. While I was mining my root farm, I ended up finding this teleporter that was right by it. It brought me right back to the main base. After collecting all these goodies, I decided it was time to go fight the 3rd boss. And then I died. I found the arena where the boss was, but I needed to find an entrance. This took me so long. Once I found an entrance, I began fighting everything that was in my way. I'm sure you all know how this eventually ends, though. Who would have guessed? I died. After running back, I continued fighting all the enemies that were in my way. I would need to kill them all to find the boss. And I died again. After I kept dying, I figured I was underleveled, so I was gonna go for a rare drop from a locked iron chest. To do that, I would need to mine a bunch of stone in hopes of getting that locked iron chest. On my first attempt, I gathered 4 locked chests. I didn't get anything. I did not get what I was looking for. I went for one more attempt to try to get a couple more chests to see if I'd get lucky. The item I wanted was about a 7% chance from each chest I opened. I gathered 3 more chests, and again, I did not get lucky. I didn't get what I wanted. I decided to go back and attempt to fight the boss even though I still felt underleveled. I just had to finish clearing out the things in the way. Once I found the room, I wasted no time. I took my potions and I spawned the boss. Seemed like I got him pretty low, but I died. This time around, I would make a new weapon and see if that would help. I got him really low until I finally killed him. Or so I thought. He has a second phase? I honestly got pretty close to beating him this time, and I really enjoyed the weapon I used during this fight. I figured that if I made more potions, I could just always stay at max health. This is what I ended up doing. I felt a lot more confident this time around. I knew he had a second phase, and I knew his attacks a lot better than when I originally fought him. I got him to the second phase pretty quickly, and I was feeling good. And I eventually did it. I then grabbed his loot and took it all home again. I put the final altar in the stone, which activated the main core. I then spoke with the main core, and it told me that I would need to travel farther out in my world. This led me to discovering the Sunken Sea biome, which unfortunately was not the This led me to discovering the Sunken Sea biome, which unfortunately was not the biome I was looking for. I started doing some general looting in the area before heading home. When I got home, I realized I was tired of looking at this same ugly base I had the entire time. It was time for a transformation, and a transformation is what I did. I got most of the redesigning done, but I figured I'd finish the rest later. I then began making an automatic root farm. After this, I was off to look for the next biome. I kept exploring. I then found the desert, which was also not the biome I was looking for. Since I got unlucky going north and south trying to find the biome I was looking for, I began to make a minecart road going east. After traveling out to the east, I ended up finding the exact biome I was looking for. I began harvesting the next ore that I would need. After collecting the ores, I went home and I made the scarlet workbench. I knew I would need wool to make my new armor, so I started setting up a little farm where I would bring some sheep. I then set off to go steal some sheep and bring them back to my base. After this, I went to collect some more of the ore that I would need to make my new armor set. While exploring, I found a scarlet cluster, which was amazing to find. After collecting 168 ore, I felt pretty satisfied and decided to head home. But I died. I ran back to grab my loot, but also to set up drills on the cluster which I had found. On my way back to the base, I was checking my inventory and I saw that I got a really good set of armor. This armor set was good if I wanted to be a summoner. After this, I ran up north to check up on the iron deposit which I had drills on. There were hundreds of iron ore waiting for me. After doing some research, I found out that there was a summoning weapon which went very well with the armor set I had looted. The only problem is that it was a very low drop percentage. I started farming the enemies which had the chance of dropping the item. And then I died. I spent a lot more time trying to get the drop that I needed. And then I died. And I died again. And again. And again. Until over an hour later, I finally got the item I needed. The item was called the Tome of the Dead. I put on the new gear with the new weapon and I finally felt decked out for once. However, this was the end of my 100 days. So, starting off my 200 days, I made some scarlet drills, and I went to put them on the scarlet boulder that I had found, because I still had tin drills on them. The scarlet drills were much faster than the tin drills. On my way home, I noticed a silver boulder, but then I died. While I was running back to get my loot, I got trapped in a really stupid way, and I died again. And the same exact thing happened again. After that exploring, I got a scarlet chest, but I didn't really get much good from it. Before I left the base, I decided to plant all the new seeds that I had picked up. I went to go check up on my iron boulder, and I also placed the new scarlet drills on it. After all that, I explored the Sunken Sea for a while, and I was just really getting anything I could. After getting back, I expanded on the farm at home, adding the new seeds that I'd collected. With all the exploring I had done in the Sunken Sea, I had enough to get an octarine workbench. I also made an octarine pickaxe. I also made the anvil so I would be able to craft the armor. I was going to the Sunken Sea to get more ore and plank, but I died. I got a ton of planks and ore, but that was until I ran into a dungeon. My inventory was full, but I still wanted to loot what I could while I was there. I got back and I smelted all the ores and I sold some of the extra gear that I had. With the ore that I had, I ended up making a Fury Forge, which honestly was not what I needed at all. That was for much later in the game. I went back to the Sunken Sea to get more ore that I would need to make the armor, and I also went to the wilderness to get feathers, because I would need that to scan for the next boss. While I was exploring, I saw this room and I thought the tree in it looked really cool. When I got back, I had enough ore to make the jewelry workbench. I was slowly making all the benches I needed. Once I had enough octarine, I made the octarine axe, which had a new special move. I would still need more octarine ore to make the armor set that I wanted. I died. And I died again. I was finally able to make the bow, but I would still need much more ore to make the armor set. I went to go get some more ore. And then I died. When I came back to grab my loot that I dropped, I grabbed all the ores as well, and I did pretty good. I ran into these remains where there was a chest, and the ring in it was pretty good. I just continued to mine ore until I got too bored to do anymore. I checked up on my scarlet drill and it honestly got me a lot of scarlet. After that, I found these tin boulders near my base, which was honestly pretty lucky. They were right next to each other and they were like right by my base. So I put some tin drills down on these boulders, and with all that scarlet that I had gotten, I was able to set up some automation machine behind the drills. And after waiting all this time, I was finally able to make my octarine gear. After I figured out that I could automate the smelting on the boulders that I found around the world, I decided to set it up on all the boulders which I had found. With my new gear crafted, I went out to the wilderness to try to get more feathers because I knew I needed just a few more to be able to locate the next boss. After a bit of time, I died. I checked up on my scarlet generator and it was doing really good. The only downside is that it was smelting really slowly. I did my last bits of exploring before I had enough feathers to make the scanner that I needed. Before I crafted the scanner, I sold a couple of the junk items that I still had in my inventory. I put an egg through the incubator, which I looted. And I also crafted the scanner for the next boss. Before I decided to fight the boss, I wanted to make sure that I had all the automation down on all the boulders that I had built. It was just going to make everything easier in the long run. This one took me a while to do, but I eventually figured it out. I wanted to also do some fishing just to make sure I had the best food possible before I fought the boss. While I was tunneling to where the boss was, I found this weird biome. It ended up being the boss room of the boss I was not even trying to fight. I decided why not just go for it. When I was done fighting the Hive Mother, I wasted no time getting to the next boss. I organized my inventory a little bit before fighting the boss, and then I eventually spawned it. This fight was much easier than I had anticipated. I went home so I could talk to the core, and it told me that I would need to look for the next boss in the Sunken Sea. I also made a new base at home because the last boss I killed had allowed me to let a new NPC move in. After that, I did some exploring in the Sunken Sea, and I found this boulder right here. I was getting ready to set up the drills on the boulder, but then... I decided to be productive on my way back to my gravestone, so I put some minecarts down. This would make it a lot easier to get back to this boulder in the future. I checked some of my boulders for materials because I knew I would want to set up as many more boulders as possible before I continue to progress in the game. When I was done doing all my work with the boulders, I decided to explore a bit around the Sunken Sea. Ended up finding this teleporter right here, which honestly would be really useful. It would let me teleport from the spawn base all the way out here, rather than taking the minecarts the whole way. I found a dungeon right next to this teleporter, so I decided to do a bit of looting. I died. When I was done with this, I decided that I was going to spend a lot of time in the Sunken Sea, so I was going to make a new base, especially because I was right on this teleporter. It would make it easier to travel between spawn and my new base. Upon doing a little more exploration, I found this boulder that was right next to my base. I then continued to work on my base for about half an hour. I pretty much finished up my house, and then I made the scanner to find the next boss. I traveled over to where the boss was, and there was this teleporter that was right in front of the boss room, and honestly was going to make it very easy to fight this boss in the future. Well, not easy to fight the boss, but easy to get back to this room. I figured that I was not ready to fight the boss yet, so I went on to the next biome and I got as much ore as possible. After processing those ores I had collected, I had more than enough to make the next workbench. I would just need to collect more ore so I could actually make the armor and tools. I went home to process all these ores, but I got bored of waiting for the ores to smelt, so I made the summoner for the next boss. I then went on to fight the boss with a new weapon I got from the desert. After a minute, I did barely any damage to him and I died. This is going to be a really hard fight. After fighting the boss, most of my ore had processed, so I decided to make the next set of armor. I also had enough tools to make the next faster boat. I did some more exploring in the desert biome just so I could feel more geared up and ready for the fight. I took a break exploring the desert when I found the next biome. I thought it looked really cool and I decided to explore it for a minute. Super far from my base in this new biome to try. After all of my new preparations, I just decided to go back in and fight the boss again. I lasted less than I did the first time I tried, but I seem to be doing a little more damage to it. After losing to Amaroth so badly, I decided to just fight the next boss. I would need to travel to this biome to collect some slime so I could make the locator. I then made some new armor with all the exploring I had done, but for some reason, I could not craft the boots. It also let me make the crossbow. I just could not craft the boots for some reason. I ended up joining on a different account and crafting the boots through that account, which ended up working. I did some more exploring so I could finally have enough slime to make the scanner to fight this other boss. Once I had enough slime, I went straight home and I made the scanner. It wasn't very hard to get over there because I already had a teleporter near it, so I decided to go over and attempt to fight it. This fight did also not end very well. When I ran back to get my loot, I decided to do a little more preparation around the boss. This would honestly make it a lot easier to fight him. I used all my buffs and I went in for another fight. After fighting this boss, I was feeling pretty confident. I felt like I could take on Amaroth again. I went on to try again. Keep in mind that every time I wanted to fight this boss, I would have to craft this item, which spawned it, and it was really tedious making this item over and over again because it would get used every time that the boss spawned. I did better than my previous attempts, but not good enough. I saw that I had enough materials to make a scanner for a different boss, so I decided to just do this instead. I was going to knock out as many other bosses as I could before fighting Amaroth. I died very quickly, but I knew if I came back with the proper setup around this arena, I'd be able to fight him a lot better. After I killed this boss, I had been doing some research on the wiki, and I found out there was another boss which I was missing. It was the King Slime from Terraria, which was honestly really cool for me as a really big Terraria fan. I went on to fight the King Slime as I was stalling fighting Amaroth again. After beating these two bosses, I decided to fight Amaroth once more, but this time with a summoner loadout. It went so much worse than before. And that about wraps it up for my 200 days. Please subscribe and like, because this video took me a lot of time. Stay tuned for day 300 and let's see if I can finally beat Amaroth. Yo, what's up guys? After taking a 2-month break from Core Keeper, I finally had the itch to come back to the game, with one goal in mind. That goal was to finish the game. I started off my 300 days by crafting the summon to fight Amaroth again and going to fix up the arena. I then began fighting him, but I realized my mistake. I accidentally made the wrong summon. This didn't stop me from using it in my base as a design though. I realized the only item that I was missing was some bugs. I went to collect bugs and I ended up crafting the summon for Amaroth. The correct one this time. I was more confident than any of my previous fights. I had tweaked my gear and tools so that I was doing more damage than earlier. And it paid off. I finally did it. I got the Amaroth chestplate, which would later prove to be useful. I was off to preparing for the next boss. However, I needed more gemstones and mech parts. I decided to farm Malgas a couple times to get the needed materials. I would also need these red items which spawned in the desert. I needed these so I can make a scanner to find the next boss where the arena was. However, while searching, I just came across it naturally. Very luckily, I did not have enough of the red pieces and it would have taken me a lot more grinding, so I was very glad I found it. I farmed Malgas a couple more times to get the materials that I needed to spawn the next boss. I made the item to summon it, and I headed to the arena. I then took on the next boss, Ra-Akar. It got really close right around here, but I managed to survive. After a couple of minutes, I was finally able to take down Ra-Akar. Ra-Akar dropped an item that I would need to make the Hydra table. The Hydra table would be how I would fight the next 3 bosses. I found out that to fight the next boss, I would need to get a jungle emerald. To get a jungle emerald, I did some research and found that you could find them in trial chambers. I returned back to a trial chamber which I had previously found but never completed. I quickly died. When I returned, I didn't even notice that my helmet had broke. Even though my helmet had broke, I almost beat the trial chamber. Maybe if I had repaired it, I'd finish next time. I thought for sure I had it this time, but I died again. After finally completing the challenge room, I was disappointed when I opened the chest and saw rubies instead of the emerald I was looking for. While looking for another trial chamber in the hopes of finding an emerald, I killed something that just naturally dropped it. I guess I got pretty lucky. I crafted the summon for the next boss. I wanted a better weapon before fighting, so I decided to fight these guys in the desert. They had a 1% chance of dropping this knife that I wanted. After a lot less time than expected, this guy finally dropped one. When I got home, I upgraded the daggers twice and I reinforced them to make them as powerful as I possibly could. I also wanted to get some better armor before I fought the next boss, so I decided to fight Amaroth again. He would drop a set that I needed. I returned to the arena in hopes of getting the Amaroth armor set. Ended up getting pretty lucky on this attempt, and I got the leg armor. Since I had got the chest plate on my first attempt, I wanted to try once more to get the helmet. I did not end up getting the helmet this time. I wanted to fight Amaroth again, trying to get the helmet, but I needed more stuff. I went back to the mainland to collect some bugs. I then fought Malgaz a couple more times for the gemstones and the mech pieces. I was off to fight Amaroth again in hopes of getting the Amaroth helmet so I could complete the full set. I did not get the helmet. I farmed a little more to try to spawn Amaroth once more. This will be my final time fighting him regardless if I got the helmet or not.
Raw.
Instead of the helmet, I got my 4th chest plate, so I gave up. I went home and I reinforced and upgraded the Amaroth armor pieces that I had gotten. I finally felt ready to fight the next boss. I put the summoner down, not knowing what to expect. Then this giant creature came out of the ground and I began fighting Druida, the wild titan. This was a pretty fun fight. I'd have to say this was my most fun fight in the run so far. After defeating the boss, I felt super confident going in to fight the next one. However, I needed an ocean crystal. While exploring in the same place I had found the emerald, I also found a sapphire just laying on the ground. It must have been from something I had killed and I hadn't picked it up earlier. I then quickly went into the next fight. This one was super cool. I'd recommend watching the whole thing. After completing this fight, I had all the materials I needed to fight the third and final Titan. Before I fought the final Titan, I grabbed some slime so I could make some potions at home. I wanted to have as much as I could before the next fight. I placed the summon down in the desert, not knowing what to expect again. This was the final of the 3 Titans. It had 2 clones, which were very hard to dodge the whole fight. This was also a very cool fight. I'd recommend watching the whole thing again. After defeating this boss, I got some cool loot, and I got this weird extractor pickaxe thing, but it was pretty cool. I was in the endgames now. I upgraded my daggers 3 more times with the materials I had gotten from fighting the Titans. When I returned to the core, I interacted with it, and it showed me where the final boss was. Upon arriving at the final boss arena, there were this formation of crystals around one larger crystal. I mined out all 8 crystals around the large crystal and combined those together to make it equipment. I was ready. It was time to fight the final boss. I interacted with his summoning platform and went up to talk to him. After this, an intense fight began. This was by far the coolest fight of the game. I recommend watching this entire fight. These floating triangles that he was shooting at me, and they were doing massive amounts of damage. I died on my first attempt to them. When I got back to where I had died, I was happy to realize that he was still there. However, I died the same way as I did before, but this time, I knew what I would need to avoid when I came back.
After I thought I had finally defeated him, oh, I was so wrong. He entered his second phase, which was insane. I felt like I had a pretty good run on this, except my knife ended up breaking. I just switched to melee weapons, which was pretty bad for me, because all of my current buffs were based on ranged damage. Because of the fact that I had to go melee, I ended up dying. I was so close to beating him, but I ended up dying. This wasn't really a big deal, as I had learned that when I came back, his health was not reset. After taking down his last shield, I ended up killing him. It was really satisfying. I traveled back to the core and interacted with it. This brought me to the final game screen. I had beaten the game. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much for watching. This took me so long to edit and make, especially all 3 videos. Thank you.